What's up, Pulsar fam? You guys read the title and thumbnail, so let's jump into the recap. When we last left off, school days began for Izuku and company, culminating in an attack on the USJ facility by the newly revealed League of Villains. During the incident, Izuku would be mortally wounded while trying to defend All Might, and the number one hero would have to make a choice to save the boy's life. We return to this story now. It had been 4 days since the attack on the USJ and the passing down of the quirk One for All by Toshinori Yagi to Izuku Midoriya. The boy's life had been saved when his original quirk, nanites, increased the power of its own self-healing abilities through One for All, but he is still not awoken yet. Recovery Girl suspected that his body not only needed time to heal, but he also needed time to adjust as One for All and nanites interacted with each other. What neither Recovery Girl or All Might had the microscopic vision to see is that at the center of Deku's body, a silver nanite that seemed larger than the rest began to glow a bit brighter. In the canon of Generator Rex, this will be known as the Omega-1 nanite, which allows Rex to control his own nanites and the nanites of others. But as the series does not follow the same rules as the original source material of Generator Rex, we can't operate on the exact same circumstances. So here, as Deku is naturally born with nanites inside his body and not artificially given them, the Omega-1 is just a natural adaptation of his body to better utilize them. Kind of like Bakugo's skin around his hands being naturally more thick, so his hands aren't constantly being damaged by his own explosions. The Omega-1 in this universe simply allows to use control of his nanites, and with the addition of One for All, it's been supercharged. So that being said, Deku's body is in a very fragile and unstable state due to his nanites also being in an unstable state themselves. So he needs to be monitored in case the nanites were to go off somewhat, or just go out of control and overreact, and in some ways resemble cancerous cells. Though it may have saved his life, One for All has powered up Deku's nanites so powerfully that for the first time in his life, it's actually possible for him to become an exponentially variegated organism, or an Evo. Though again, nobody can really see that this is going on, and Deku's body is just kind of doing its own thing right now, but while it's asleep, nothing bad can really happen. So suffice to say, when he finally does wake up and he realizes that his last memory was seeing Nomu flying towards him, he's really startled. The first person to run to the infirmary would be his mother, who would have been called after the USJ and told the half-truth of Deku being in a state too fragile to move to a normal, actual hospital. Because of this, I think that at least one of Recovery Girl's infirmary beds could be booked out until Deku was in a safer condition to move. In reality, this is all about no one finding out that All Might had to pass down his own quirk to save Deku's life. And side note, but since it had been a pseudo hospital room, most of Class 1A had been by to visit Deku in his injured state during the past few days, and his mother had been pretty much staying at the school with him for the last 4 days as well. Hearing him cry in shock, Inko runs into the room to hug her son, and Izuku, seeing her as the first real familiar thing to him, would reach out towards her to get to her sooner. But as he does, his nanites activate and he accidentally makes the snipe cannon, and the back of the gun shoots out, finding a giant hole in the wall and chewing it up into a dense ball, aiming it right towards Inko, who jumps back and screams just as Deku did as he was crushed by his own weapon. But just in the nick of time, All Might appears in front of the cannon as it fires, easily catching the condensed ball of concrete with his bare hand and laughing triumphantly as he crushes it. He would then go on to harmlessly disable the cannon from off Deku's hand and save the day. Outside of Deku's current fever dream, the heavily bandaged Eraserhead was panting as he had just barely made it into the room and deactivated Deku's build just in time with his own quirk. As the snipe cannon falls apart, Inko runs to her son and shakes him out of it. Still staring Deku down, Eraserhead asked Inko to go and get All Might and Recovery Girl. This was a problem. About 10 minutes later, All Might and Recovery Girl had arrived from the teachers' meeting about the upcoming UA Sports Festival that Aizawa had been heading to when he had to stop and save Inko. Once they get there, Inko and Aizawa are asked to step outside while the two of them handle this, making both Deku's mother and his teacher extremely suspicious about what's going on currently. But the best option right now is to let the two handle this and then ask questions afterwards. In the infirmary, Deku is filled on all that had happened and what his current situation was, which, under the context, would likely give Deku a near panic attack. But this Deku has settled into himself and into being a hero, as his canon counterpart had at this point in the story, and so I think, just barely, he is able to stay reasonably calm about what he's being told. Then they get to the part about him being named All Might's successor, and he totally has a panic attack. He actually freaks out so bad that his nanites are agitated and accidentally activated once again. This time on his foot, as a Skull Stomper is formed and nearly does its namesake to Recovery Girl, if not for All Might protecting her by wrapping his body around her and taking the hit. Though the two are kicked through two walls in the process, but thankfully no one is harmed. Now with a giant hole in the infirmary wall, Deku's quirk is once again subdued by Razorhead, and it falls apart, causing everyone to sigh in relief, and Deku to begin frantically apologizing as All Might and Recovery Girl return, with All Might laughing and Recovery Girl not being happy. All Might is just barely able to convince Aizawa to step out of the room again, and Deku is given a cup of tea and told to relax, as All Might walks him through everything once again, revealing that Deku should not feel guilty about being given one for all to save his life. Truth be told, ever since the UA entrance exam, All Might had been considering Deku. From their conversation on the rooftop nearly a year ago, he'd virtually already gained All Might's favor. The hero just needed to be absolutely sure and get to know Izuku a bit more. This was originally meant to take place over their time together through his high school career. Some things just don't go as planned, but it's a hero's duty to make a bad situation as far from such as possible. And he truly believed that one day, young Midoriya would do that. When he was done training him, Deku would surpass even him as a hero, and truly embody all the ideals that a hero should embody. And this makes Deku feel much better. Downright inspired, honestly. Still very nervous and probably about to crack under the pressure, but inspired nonetheless. Then All Might had to go and revert to his true form and rub the back of his neck sheepishly, informing Deku that this was the exact reason that it really sucked that he's not going to be able to participate in the upcoming UA Sports Festival. All Might was about to explain when he heard Aizawa's voice through the hole in the wall, and he began to walk into the room. Quickly, All Might reverts back to his muscle form and poses just in time, getting Aizawa to stare him down suspiciously. He then goes on to tell Deku why he would not be allowed in the sports festival. Now, because I'm anticipating that a lot of people will not like this idea that Deku will not get to participate, I'm going to let most people decide why they personally feel that Deku will not be able to participate. My favorite reason is that Principal Nezu and All Might would definitely view Deku as being a little too unstable to participate with other students. He could kill someone if he loses control at the wrong time, or something bad could really happen here. Some may not agree with that reasoning, but either way, Deku just can't participate here. The out-of-story reason is because with his builds and the versatility of his builds and where Deku's about to go physically with his powers, the sports festival just wouldn't be a challenge for him and he'd win it very easily. Once the in-story reason is explained, Deku sadly nods and resigns himself to watching the event for another year. Around this time, the infirmary door would burst open as nearly every member of Class 1A rushed in to greet the now awoken Deku, showering him in praise of his fight with Nomu, or a totally detailed list of notes about everything Deku had missed in class while hospitalized. And a really loud yell of how he never really was worried about Deku, and now he's 4 days of class ahead of the nerd. So ha. With that, everyone will be shooed away by Razorhead, who is still deeming Deku too dangerous to be around for everyone right now. And so the next 10 days will pass as most of UA geared up for the sports festival. We even still get the interaction of Class 1A and the other classes with Hitoshi Shinso and Tetsu standing together and they're calling out of Class 1A, while Bakugo still tells them off, pretty much like in canon. It's possible without the influence of Izuku Kendo in the class, Monoma could have actually risen to the same kind of position that she was and become the head of their class, or I could actually see Shinso doing the same. Meanwhile, taking some time off, All Might would make use of any and all free time to help Deku get used to his body and the new state it's in, and even test out what All One for All had done to his original quirk, power. Power in terms of Deku's builds and his natural physicality had been far increased, so he just had to readjust to it. And during this time, I'm going to say that Deku is able to get his accidental builds to stop appearing by getting his nanites back under somewhat unconscious control. It's just that with the extra power up One for All is giving them, at any moment they could go out of control if he's not consciously thinking about it or he's not asleep. At the moment, Deku just lacks the ability to do two complicated tasks the way he needs to completely subconsciously subdue his nanites. Furthermore than that, he can feel that there's something completely different about him. He feels as if there's more he can use to build things with, he just has not gotten a chance to test it out just yet. As for Deku's physicality, well, his natural physical strength without any builds has increased a tiny amount, just like his mild durability and his mild healing factor. They're both a bit stronger now. And in terms of how strong his builds are going to be, common misconception with last part. Deku is actually not strong enough to really do any viable damage against Nomu. I know a lot of people saw him being able to throw Nomu the way he did and kind of being able to somewhat react to him, made them think, oh wow, Deku's really strong here, but he really wasn't. He just kind of caught Nomu off guard and threw him, while just using the power of his own smash hands to kind of throw Nomu. Other than that, he wasn't that strong and didn't do any significant damage to Nomu. Here though, if Deku were to take on Nomu once again, he would definitely do better. That's all I'll say for now. And once the sports festival would finally begin, Deku would resign himself to watching it, though he would not take the time off completely. While watching, he would try and think up of any builds he has currently or that could be made later down the line that could help him in any of the events that he watched, while he'd also be cheering on his friends. Now, even though the canon of the story, some of the events in the sports festival were chosen at random, because to my knowledge in the main manga Horikoshi is written, we haven't seen any other sports festival events than we did in the first actual sports festival we saw in the manga, so that means obstacle race, cavalry battle, and then battles at the end. Because of this, I won't be making up any events because, bleh, that's too fanfictiony. We'll just stick with those two events and act as if, even though in this timeline they came up random and came up as those two events, so I don't have to invent anything myself. Now, with Deku not in attendance at the sports festival, Todoroki would not make a declaration of war towards him, and would make Bakugo jealous because of it. That said, nothing has really happened in this timeline that would not make Bakugo motivated. In fact, in this timeline, I could see him definitely being even more fired up, since he doesn't get to compete against Deku. He was gonna win this competition and rub it in Deku's face. He wouldn't be useless like he was in USJ, when Deku he didn't care about that anymore. The only thing that mattered right now was his winning. In the obstacle race, it would start off as in canon, with Bakugo's reaction and initial start time coming in just a small fraction faster than in canon due to his being a bit stronger and having more general experience through training with Deku for almost 10 months. He and Todoroki would soon find themselves both vying for the first place spot, while at home, Deku was watching and taking notes. He'd been thinking about a build for quicker lateral movement, but something like a vehicle, not something for just simple jumping like he did with the Skull Stompers. In an event like this one, that would make him reign supreme. Trying to sketch out a design for this build, he actually gets kinda sad that Mei Hatsume is not available for him to talk to, since she actually could be a pretty good help right now. But then he'd realize that she's actually competing in front of his eyes on TV, and would tune right back in, rooting them all on. And by the way, I think it's possible to allow Mei to actually do a bit better in the race than she did in canon. She's been in the workshop with Deku, who in this version is really good with machines and machinery in general, and studying his builds could help her improve her own support items that she'll be using right now. Not to say she'll just be busting out her own versions of Deku's builds or anything like that, especially not at this point in time, but her things are definitely more efficient and more durable for sure. But in the last legs of the obstacle race, it would go as it did in canon, and without the interference of Deku in this timeline. Now, even in canon, after Deku had gotten in front of Bakugo and Todoroki came in second. In this timeline, I really want to give it to Bakugo though, because he is likely a bit faster and a bit stronger, and those two have been neck and neck the entire time, with a canon version of Bakugo who was not this strong. So Bakugo wins this time, coming in first place, with Todoroki coming in second place. From there, since everyone really hasn't had that many changes to their current power levels or their current stats in the timeline, we'll just move everyone up one spot since Deku is not there until you reach the 41st place, where here in this timeline, Mei Hatsume is 40th instead of Manga Fukudashi. Moving on, we move into the Cavalry battle, and Ida would likely still have the same ideology as in canon, where he wants to kind of do this on his own. Todoroki still came in second, so I don't see him changing up his analysis of the current situation and who he's going to need on his team too much. And here, Bakugo would have the most points in the game, and everyone would have a pretty good understanding of his quirk, so he'd have a lot of offers for who he should team up with. Though I think he would definitely accept Kirishima's, as his strong front horse idea would really rev Bakugo up. In this event, I think that Bakugo will want to be the indisputable champion of the game, and to him, that might mean making sure that no one else has any points by the time the game ends. So having a team that can take hits and dish him out and move around really quickly is going to be vital to him. Taking this to account, I think Uraraka, who remember is someone Bakugo has spent a lot of his time with in this timeline, since in this timeline she has a very similar relation to Bakugo as she does to Deku and Ida. He's someone that she views as being closer to in the class. Thinking on her feet, she promises Bakugo that with their powers combined, they'll have the speed and maneuverability to get all around the field and take all the points they could ever want. Once again, this entices Bakugo, who decides to take her on. And now, with only one spot left and a lot of his classmates still vying for that spot, and having to tell him what their quirks and names were once again, he actually announces that he has his own idea as he stares down Sero, who had just told him what his power was. Hearing this, Uraraka slyly accuses him of being like Deku, which gets her life threatened. At home, Deku is still thinking about this lateral movement build. This would definitely be good for this event as well. He could actually put his teammates on top of the build with him and maybe just have those who could fire long range attacks for him or protect him from the flanks and sides while he drove them all around the stadium. As soon as he got back to school, he had to get with Power Loader and May about this and see what they could come up with. Now sadly, because of things have turned out in this timeline, I don't know who May would team up with, and they would likely not be able to help her secure many points, so I think after this, she will be out of the competition. Team Todoroki would set their sights on Team Bakugo, which is actually going to be a pretty good battle. Bakugo's team has the ability to make themselves weightless and then fly using Bakugo's quirk, while also being able to stick to the ground and kind of steer themselves with Sero's quirk, so it's a very quick team. Meanwhile, Todoroki's team is still just the perfect combination of quirks, making this supreme juggernaut of speed, defense, long-range attacks, what have you. I think for the majority of the fight, Team Bakugo would not do too much running, instead trying to take out Team Todoroki. I think this would pretty much result in a stalemate for the majority of the entirety of the Cavalry battle, with Team Monoma and other things not really happening around Team Bakugo, and other teams really just trying to vie for some spot that wasn't going to be number 1 or number 2, trying to play it smart. Finally, Ida would reveal his trump card in the Recipro, and with that, I think he would steal the 10 million points from Bakugo right off his head. If this were to happen, even with Team Bakugo's impressive maneuverability, I do not think they could successfully catch up to Team Todoroki and remove the headband in time. Meaning to win now, they'd either have to set their sights on weaker teams or bet on the points they had left. But Bakugo rejects both these ideas, explaining he had one last gamble to get the 10 million back. With a hasty explanation, the whole team hesitantly agrees, and they all hunker down, as Sero attaches the most rubbery tape he can to the ground. Uraraka then makes the entire team weightless, as Bakugo has Kirishima and the others hold him as he begins releasing very powerful explosions that push them back over and over, pulling the tape taut and ready to spring them forward. Part 2 of the plan will begin, as Kirishima creates a foothold with his hands and gives Bakugo a boost up, who then calls back to his teammates that he see him on the other side as the tape pulls taut and slingshots them forward. Already moving forward at pretty high speed towards Team Todoroki, the weightless Sero, Uraraka, and Kirishima brace themselves as Kirishima activates his quirk and Uraraka releases her ability, making their weight come back and increase their velocity. With Ida currently out of commission, he cannot get them out of the way, and so Team Todoroki has to stay and face their opponents. Todoroki would erect a wall of ice, only for Kirishima to come bursting through it in his hardened state, with the other two behind him. But luckily, the ice was enough to slow them down for a small amount of time, and with that, Denki Kaminari is allowed to use his powers and shock them, putting them out of commission. Under an insulated blanket made by Yaoyorozu, Todoroki realizes something. Where's Bakugo? Todoroki has his thought just in time to hear an explosion up above and look up to see Bakugo dive bombing straight down towards them. Panicking, his first instinct is to bring a hand up and shoot a small jet of flame towards Bakugo to hopefully veer him off course. But as Bakugo has been trained with Deku in this timeline, I think he would have even better skill at maneuvering in midair, and would very easily dodge the flame and would actually land on top of Team Todoroki, snatching Todoroki's headband away before a line of Sero's tape on his back pulled taut and yanked him right back over to Team Bakugo, who, even though they had been shocked, were just barely on their feet still. But by this time, I think that the time allotted for the Cavalry battle would run out. Todoroki is sweating as he really didn't mean to use his flames, especially against Bakugo, so on top of being in shock pretty much, he's also pretty mad. Thankfully, as in canon, Yaoyorozu would have had the idea to switch their headbands around, so Bakugo would not have gotten the 10 million points. That said, I do think that Team Bakugo would have enough points to at least pass and go on to the next round. So just for simplicity's sake, Team Todoroki would still be in first place, Team Bakugo is now in second place, and Bakugo is furious. Team Tetsu is in third. In this timeline, I think it would be very hard for Shinso to get anyone in Class 1B to fall under his quirk. In these types of events, I just don't see Shinso doing very well unless you give him a team completely comprised of non-Class 1B members who are also extremely powerful, which there just aren't that many of. So finally, Team Kendo would come in 4th place, and as in the original story, their team was slated at 4th place for a good while before Team Midoriya pulled an upset and Shinso wouldn't be doing anything as well, so nothing really changes here for them. Though Team Kendo would be made up of completely different characters in this timeline, likely some of the ones we just aren't talking about here. Moving on, we would finally reach the final round, and the problem here is two things. I don't know all the members of Team Tetsu or Team Kendo to even throw into drawing for matches. The only people we know for sure are this version of Team Bakugo, Team Todoroki, as well as Tetsu and Kendo, and that leaves 6 unknown competitors. And secondly, I still have the issue of most of my audience not being manga readers, and the quirks of 14 members of Class 1B not being shown in the anime as of this time of recording. I'm still committed to not giving manga spoilers when the majority of my viewers are anime only, so once again I will encourage you all to pick up the manga as it's a very good story and worth the read. Maybe later in the anime's run I can come back to this video and add a video on top of it that goes more in depth with these possible matchups to see if there's anything I can really do with it there, but it will only be in the future. If that video is made, it should be popping up in the iCard on the top right hand of the corner of the screen right now. But the what if must go on, and with all these unknowns, I think the most reliable way to do these matchups without spoiling anybody and yet have a logical outcome would be to skip to the most logical outcome regarding the final match. Even though it may be kind of boring considering canon, I think it will be Bakugo versus Todoroki in the finals. They are just in a league of their own at this point in the story, and they have the most combat ability, especially Bakugo, who has been sparring and training with Deku with his builds for almost 10 months in this timeline. Now, midway through the finals, Tenya Ida would receive a phone call informing him that his older brother has been attacked and is currently in the hospital. Now, before we get to the actual fight, there are a few other factions to consider here in this timeline compared to the original. Number one, this would be an extremely angry Todoroki. Right now, he was 1-1 concerning the events in the sports festival, and his single win had not been an outright victory, where Bakugo had really been a thorn in his side, and was continuing to be so. Not to mention, he actually ended up using his father's quirk in front of his father. Imagine the lecture Endeavor would give him.
So, Shoto, you've finally given up that silly little declaration and seen reason. Well, good. It's about time you grew up and accepted your destiny to overcome that fool All Might. Now we can finally get down to business and teach you how to control it.
Todoroki would have been ridiculously angry, and imagine how he would feel when Bakugo was confirmed as his opponent in the finals. The guy that has been brash, rude, and annoying, a thorn in his side for the entire day, after nearly not even being on his radar this entire time, and even making him use his father's quirk. Ugh! We rarely see Todoroki extremely emotional, but here he would definitely be visibly upset. By this time, Bakugo would likely be less upset than he was originally when he first came in second in the Cavalry battle with his team. He'd definitely still be somewhat upset and high-strung over not winning, but now he'd finally get a shot at Todoroki just one-on-one and not some kind of event or race. This was just a fight, individual skills and power going head-to-head, and he knew he was better. At home, Deku was on the edge of his seat as this match is about to begin. He watched as the two faced off, Todoroki on one side scowling down Bakugo, who held a vicious grin of its own as he revved up his hands with small explosions. As soon as Cementos gave the signal for the match to begin, both competitors made a move simultaneously. Bakugo blasted himself forward, while Todoroki made the largest ice power he could in Bakugo's direction, having anticipated Bakugo's move. Quicker than Todoroki expected him to, Bakugo redirects himself in the explosion, causing his body to roll to the left in the nick of time. Shoto would then lean down and slam his palm into the ground, making an even larger barrage of ice fire towards Bakugo, who, knowing he could not dodge this time, skids to a stop and begins exploding himself a hole through the large barrage of ice. Digging himself out, he once again began his rushdown, while Todoroki constantly refused to use his flame, allowing Bakugo to grab him by his shirt and hair, flipping him and throwing him nearly out of bounds. Todoroki's eyes would erect a slide behind him and save him, while Bakugo would snarl at him and demand that he use his flames and not hold back on him. Todoroki would angrily refuse, and I think with tension so high, he would go a bit into detail about why he would not. With a good bit of distance between them, Todoroki once again makes a huge wall of ice to rush towards Bakugo, slowing himself down even more with the frost. Snarling, Bakugo grabs his own arm as reinforcement, and releases a bone-shaking explosion that destroys a good chunk of the ice and causes a small shockwave to blow through the arena. Bakugo would then go on a tirade about Todoroki holding back, very similar to Deku's canon version, but a lot more aggressive and disrespectful. I think if similar feelings of inspiration were felt, but also include Todoroki's current festering anger, that he would still be pushed into using his flames, but more out of anger than friendly competition in this timeline. He's trying to shut Bakugo up. As flames consume his left side, Todoroki calls out fine and lifts his hand, shooting off a huge gout of flame that Bakugo once again nearly avoids. Like we would see in his fight against Stain in canon, Todoroki will have some trouble with opponents who can move swiftly and agilely in a lateral direction, something that Deku couldn't do in their canon fight, allowing Bakugo an advantage over Todoroki. And considering that, I'm going to say that we're in a stalemate, with Todoroki's defense and range keeping Bakugo at bay, and Bakugo's agility keeping him from taking any blows that would really do significant damage. But both would soon realize that a battle of attrition is Todoroki's to win. With Todoroki using his flames and his ice here, he's not going to have the same stamina problems as canon. That said, Bakugo had way more maneuverability and attack power, not to mention his stamina is by no means bad. So here's what I'll do. I have the outcomes for either winner already written down. I'll leave a poll up in the iCard, and at the start of part 5, we'll have our winner and move on with the story after you guys have voted. So please be sure to like and vote in the poll on the iCard and have civil debates in the comments about who wins using all the factors I've gone over here. You should also subscribe to the notification bell so you're updated whenever a new What If comes out and when this next part of this What If comes out. You should also follow me on my social media accounts to see all kinds of sneak peeks, fan art, and exclusive content. Both are linked in the description below. Last, but certainly not least, I have to shout out my amazing patrons who do so much to support this channel. In Hero tier, Loaf McQuaid, Zara Returns, Treb, and Stefan Confront. In Shinobi tier, Pizza 15X. In Z Warrior tier, Shannon Roberts. In Beyond tier, Knuckles OX, Don, and Robert Smith. And in the Plus Ultra tier, DJ the Lazy Gamer. Nothing can ever be said to express the amount of gratitude and love I have for you guys, but just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, be sure to take care of yourselves and go beyond. Plus Ultra. See you guys next time.